Well, welcome to Sunday School. It's always fun to be here each week. I ask you to remember to do your prayer list and pray for those things that need to be prayed for. And I also ask you at the top of the list to make sure that you pray and thank God for all the good things He's done in your life. And I had been asking for prayer, and it is answered. They did find that the cancer was active, but everything's going to be fine. God's in control, and we've got a plan, so we'll go from there. But continue lifting Margaret and I up in your prayers. Let me adjust this just a little bit uh, because we still have some medical issues, and like most of you do, I'm sure. Anyway, this is Sunday School, and it's for August 23rd, this coming Sunday. And it's about faithfulness, but it speaks about faithfulness in a field, and that field is sort of at the center of the story of what happens here. Uh, we're looking at some ladies that's very dedicated, loyal, standing by each other. This is what Christians do. This is a perfect example of the faithfulness and the loyalty that we all should have when it comes to friends and close and people we can help or family and things like that. Now, Ruth is a book that we're getting it from. It's from chapter 1, verses 11 through 18. And then we move up to chapter 2, verses 5 through 12, is where we get our information that we're sharing today. The first part, when we look at it, is Ruth chapter 1, verses 11 through 13. And it speaks about a bitter road, how it begins. And when you think about that, Naomi was a lady that was very dedicated. She and her family had moved from Bethlehem to, I believe it was Moab, and there was a famine. And we remember the famine that Joseph was in Egypt. And because of the famine, Bethlehem, there just wasn't anything going on, and food was scarce, and people just couldn't get it. So they moved there to get it, and they had been living there for a number of years. But one day her husband died. And of course, in the ancient world, ladies were pretty dependent upon, like, the head of the household, the provider, which was the man of the house. And him being passed away now, she didn't have one. Well, her and her husband had had two boys, and of course, naturally, the way the rule is the boys took over. In other words, the oldest one, then the next one, and so forth. Well, it so happened that those two boys had died. They died also shortly after that, and so she had no man at all. So in the ancient times back then, to not have a provider was, I mean, it was like the end. I mean, she had no means of having food or anything. So for her, this was a point in life that was very difficult because where does she go? I mean, what does she do? So she makes this decision that she's going back to Bethlehem. So in her life, it's like she's standing on this dusty road, it's a crossroad, trying to figure out which way to go in life, not really knowing that God is already laying out things. You see, that's the thing we don't understand sometimes, that God goes before us and lays out a plan that we can follow. And that's what he's doing here, which will involve the uh, daughter-in-law, one of them, and the other one went her way. But as Naomi stood here thinking about where am I going to go with a heavy heart and grief, and if you were in a situation like that, you had no means of income, you had no means of support, that you'd lost your husband, your two sons, and that I guess the decision of going back to Bethlehem was going back to a place that she was from originally. And so she had made up her mind to go back there. Uh, and going back to Bethlehem, she was totally without any support. It was like she was empty. And maybe you could even say, sort of like grabbing at whatever that she thought might help her situation. But as she was getting ready to go, she had her two daughter in laws with her, and she told them both, she urged them to go back to find new lives because their husbands is gone. That was her two sons, and hopefully find some new hope and new families to be part of. When we think about something like this, we don't think about it, but sometimes life brings us to places that we never expected. I'm sure that Naomi never expected this to happen, and probably the two daughter-in-laws never really expected this to happen. But you and I have been down that road. I have been down it where God has taken us to places that, or life has, that we never expected. Places of loss and confusion and disappointment. And that's where she's at. See, she felt like her story was over with. I mean, there was no place for her to go to regenerate it. She couldn't see at this point what God was already doing and doing for and to her. And everything seemed to be bitter right now in her life. And you think about her situation, it would appear to be. But then we see in Ruth 1:14 and 18 a choice that changes everything, a choice that changed the life of people. Orpah kissed Naomi. That was one of the daughter-in-laws. She kissed Naomi goodbye. But Ruth, the other one, decided she just wasn't. I'm going to hang to what I got, what I know. And so, with tears in her eyes and determination in her heart, Ruth was about to make a decision that would shape her future completely, but in a way that she couldn't see it now. You see, God is in front of us doing things, and your future is going to be a little different than what you might think. We don't know what He's doing, but He's out there doing things to make sure that we have that future. So Ruth says this to Naomi: Where you go, I will go. Your people shall be my people, and your God, my God. That's devotion. That's loyalty. You see, Ruth chose faithfulness when it would have been easier for her to have done like the other daughter in law, just walk away. Just go on back into this town, and because that's where you were living close by, and try to resume your life. And hopefully somebody there would take you in and do the things necessary. But Ruth said, no. I've been with Naomi all this period of time, and she's always been faithful. She's got a God that's been good to her. So I'm going to stay with her, and where she goes, I will go, and we'll do what we have to do. She was determined. Loyalty. She chose loyalty, you see, over comfort. She chose commitment over convenience. You see, she didn't know what the future held, but she, like Naomi, she put her trust in the God that Naomi served. And that's the right place to put it. For you and I, that's the stories we see here that happened many years ago. And you see the results of what took place. We'll look at more of it next week. But that's what happens when you put your trust in God. Today, we live in a world where people often walk away when things get hard. Let me tell you, people turn their back on difficulty. They don't want anything to do with it. But Ruth reminds us that no matter how bad things get, faithfulness means that you stay. You cling to that thing that has got you where you're at. You trust God in those things. And even when things are difficult, even when it costs us something, we should stay faithful, which means that we stay with God. We don't change. We don't turn. Nothing's better out there. And then Ruth 2, 5 through 7 speaks of faithfulness in the ordinary. When Ruth and Naomi had arrived in Bethlehem, Ruth didn't go in like some and go into whatever house or living quarters they could get and take it easy. Immediately, Ruth did not sit down. She went to work. She found work in fields, gathering leftover grain just to survive. When we moved to California that time, I can relate to this because the season was over with. But they always left over things in fields, and that's what we found. We found the leftovers in some of the fields, and we picked some fruit and vegetables and brought in extra money while our dad looked for work, and finally he got work. But that's what she's doing here. The season was over, but there was leftovers out there. So she went out there and started picking those so her and Naomi could survive. And so Naomi had led her, excuse me, all this time, Now it was her time to pay back that, and she was faithful in it. So she went out there picking the leftover. It wasn't wonderful, glamorous work. It was humble. It was hard work, but that's how they survived. She did what she had to do. You see, faithfulness is not always seen in big moments like this leftover stuff, little here, little there. That's how big moments actually take place. And that's where faithfulness really shines. Sometimes it shows up in our everyday things, small, but it shows up. Doing what's right, working hard, caring for others, and trusting God in small steps. Those things like that a lot of times don't come in big steps and big moments, small stuff. Ruth didn't know that God was already arranging her future. He's already laying things out for her. She was just being faithful in the present, doing what you do to survive, being faithful, not complaining, not grumbling, going out there doing what she had to do. Ruth chapter 2, verses 8 and 12 talks about favor finds the faithful. And what she didn't see, God at work. So here is Boaz. He is the owner of the field. He saw the dedication of this woman. She shows up, she does her job, she doesn't complain. She gets she gets what she can to help her and her mother-in-law survive, Naomi. And so the owner of this field, Boaz, he noticed her and he saw how dedicated she was. He had heard about her loyalty to Naomi and her willingness to leave everything behind to be with Naomi and Naomi's God. And because of her faithfulness, she found favor with Boaz. And we'll see in the next time where they actually get married. And what happens with that is Naomi falls into under that too, which gives her that male support again. So her life is not over. See, God was doing things this whole time that they didn't see. And so here it is. God sees faithfulness even when others don't see faithfulness. And so Boaz spoke kindly of her and he protected her and he provided for Ruth. He said this, that the Lord replays your work and a full reward be given you. So God sees that. Even when others don't see it, God does. He sees everything. He honors those who stays true. And here she was being this true person, helping others. It wasn't just about her and working and putting food in her mouth. It was her dedication to Naomi, her mother-in-law, that she was working for too. So it was one of those things where God tells us we are to help the least of his. And when we do things to the least of his, he says that's like doing it to me. And so he honors those that stays true. He honors those that trust him and honors those who walk in obedience. And that's what she was doing. She was honoring God. She was walking in obedience. She was being what a Christian person should be, dedicated, loyal, and helping Naomi that couldn't help herself at that time. You see, faithfulness still matters. It mattered then, it matters today. You see, in today's world, faithfulness can feel rare. It is. You think about that. People today, it's so easy for them not to be faithful. See, people are quick today to give up on relationships, on commitments. That's why we see relationships like marriages falling apart. It's getting to where they don't marry because they can't hold a relationship. Families don't get along anymore. Relationships is destroyed and commitments. People don't think anything about breaking a commitment. They'll say they're going to do something, but they don't do it. Even it goes on to say that even with God, people don't honor it, they give up. That's why our churches are running so low like they are. That's why people don't come, is because they give up. But you see, Ruth's story reminds us that faithfulness still matters. Faithfulness in the family, in the work, and in our walk with God. All of those things matters. You may not see immediate results, but there's one thing you and I can always be guaranteed, and that is God is always working behind the scenes. You see, here, standing at that crossroads, Naomi didn't have anything. It was empty. Ruth decided to go with her. Ruth had no idea what was going on. She couldn't see into the future. She was like Naomi. She didn't have anywhere to go. I mean, what was she going to be gained by going there other than being a good person and faithful? But what she didn't see, but she put her trust in, that Naomi's God would come through, and he did, because you see, he was already planning things. That field and Boaz and him going back to Bethlehem just didn't happen. Sometimes when you do stuff, it doesn't just happen. It's because God sent you there. And in my life, I can truthfully say that that is a fact, because there's things that we did. We went back to a church one time, and we had planned not going back to that church, but we did. And because of that, we started a program for senior adults in that very church. You see, God sent us back there. We didn't see it, but he did. So as we bring this to a conclusion, the main thing is we stay on course with God. Ruth's journey started with a loss, but her faithfulness led to the blessings that we see her having here. She became part of God's greater story, one that will lead all the way to Jesus, just like he does you and I. Your story is not over yet. When God gets ready for your story to be in, he will. But the main thing you want to do is hang in there with that faithfulness, so your story will be like hers. It will lead all the way to Jesus. When things get very difficult and hard, don't give up. And when the road is uncertain, stay faithful. And when you don't understand, you just keep trusting, knowing that God is going to come through for you. And you see, God is writing a story through your faithfulness, and he did through hers. And it will be worth it in the end. And let me tell you, your story is going to end up okay if God is ahead of you doing the things and you've accepted it and he is writing it. I can assure you, your story is going to be a good story as it's told into the future. And when you see the end result, look, God has promised us eternity and salvation. And all we have to do is finish the race. Do just what she did. You may be standing at that dusty crossroad right now, deciding what to do. Remember this: be faithful, put God first, and I can assure you, he's ahead of you right now, going ahead making plans that you can't see, that you will have something when it comes to that point, and you will see it when you get there, and you will know it. Well, God bless. I hope you enjoy this. And like I say, this will come out tomorrow, or it'll be out today. But normally I do it tomorrow, but it's hard in the morning sometimes when I get up to do that. So I do it on Thursday afternoon, but this is for this coming Sunday. Make sure you go in person if you can to worship and in your church and support it. Sunday school, normally they're around 9:30, and worship service normally around 10:30. Go in person if you can. Father, thank you so much for the story of Naomi and Ruth, and thank you for showing what true faith is all about, and being faithful to a point that she was willing to go and carry the load as far as work. And immediately, without waiting, she went right out and found work so they would have something that was help them in their food and keep them going until things, maybe in her own mind, she could have things better. But Father, she never gave up. She kept going. And I pray that we all will take a look at Ruth's story and Naomi's, and see that you were out there the whole time, plan it, got it ready for them, and you doing the same thing for us today. If we would just have that faithfulness and put our trust in you, and I pray that we will do that. Most of all, if we don't know you, Father, I pray today we get to know you. And whoever who doesn't today will make that decision. Father, I ask you to be with those that's going through difficult times, and thank you for watching over me and my family going through the tests and things we've been going through. And Father, I ask you to just continue to bless our group. Thank you for everything you've done. And Father, I ask you to lead, guide, and direct us, and forgive us where we have failed you. For this we ask in your name. Amen. God bless, and I will see you next time, and I hope you enjoy this. Invite somebody to come and join. Share this with someone. Well, God bless.